Before the blessing comes, there is always a valley, and not the kind that simply winds between hills like a ribbon of grass, but the kind that descends into shadow, where the soul is stripped of its ornaments and left, quietly, with nothing but the ache of longing. It is strange how we forget that blessings are not decorations hung on the tree of life, but fruit grown through time, under weather, and often through suffering. We are a people eager for light, but reluctant to sit in darkness. We desire harvests but shrink from the tilling, the pruning, the seasons of silence when the soil of our hearts feels barren. Yet this is the way of things. The roots stretch down long before the fruit stretches up. In the story of every true blessing, there is always a hidden chapter, written in ink invisible to the world, but all too vivid to the one living it. There is a pattern in this universe, a deep magic, older than we realize. Nothing truly worth having comes to us without first costing us something of ourselves. And the strange irony is that this cost, this waiting, this wrestling, this refining, is not punishment but preparation. The fire does not destroy the gold, it reveals it. The storm does not erase the tree, it strengthens its grip on the earth. And yet we resist. We live in an age that teaches us to leap over the process and demand the reward. We are told to speak it into existence without ever being taught how to weep it into growth, but the soul cannot be tricked. It knows when it is being hollowed or deepened. It knows that the greater the blessing, the greater the weight it must be ready to bear. For what is a blessing, really? It is not simply comfort or ease. It is something far more sacred. A blessing is a responsibility wrapped in favor. It is light entrusted to a vessel, not merely for the vessel's own good, but for the world around it. To be blessed is not to be placed above others, but to be equipped to serve them. It is not elevation, but consecration. So, before the blessing comes the shaping, before the crown, the crushing, before the open door, the knocking in the night with no answer. And often it is in those unseen places that character is built, and in that quiet anonymity that faith is forged. We think we are waiting for the blessing, but the truth is, the blessing is waiting for us to become the kind of person who can receive it without being destroyed by it. Think of the stories we love most, the ones where the hero must first lose something dear, must wander, must face fearsome doubts, must endure the silence of heaven and the scorn of man. And yet, it is precisely in those passages where something eternal is planted. For there is a certain kind of wisdom that cannot be learned in comfort, a certain kind of love that can only grow in the absence of what we thought we needed. We say we want to be used by something greater than ourselves, but forget that great instruments are not made overnight. The chisel must strike the marble again and again before the shape begins to emerge. The clay must be spun and pressed not once but many times, and perhaps that's what the season before the blessing truly is. A holy chiseling, a sacred forming. Not punishment, but precision. You see, to receive a blessing is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new weight, a new calling, a new demand on the heart, and God, though silent at times, prepares us well. He is not concerned with how quickly we arrive, but with who we become along the way. He is not moved by timelines, but by transformations. And sometimes the delay in the blessing is not a denial, but a deep kindness we can't yet comprehend. We think we are waiting on God, but very often He is waiting on us to be ready. Not ready in performance, but ready in surrender. Ready to hold the blessing with open hands and not clenched fists. Ready to pour it out and not hoard it. Ready to trust that the one who gives is also the one who sustains. And so, before the blessing comes, we may find ourselves in seasons that feel like endings, but are actually beginnings in disguise. We may feel forgotten, but are being remembered in ways we do not yet understand. The story is not finished. the ink is not dry, and though we cannot see the blessing now, we are being shaped to carry it well when it does arrive. True blessings are preceded by seasons of preparation, pruning, and silence. Before any true blessing can unfold in our lives, there is always a time of preparation, pruning, and silence. It is not punishment, but an ancient pattern written into the nature of reality itself. Just as seeds are buried long before they bloom, the soul must pass through hidden seasons that seem still, slow, and forgotten. In these moments, it may feel as though heaven has turned quiet and the path forward is uncertain. But this is the very soil in which blessings begin to take root. These seasons come not to destroy, but to deepen. They are not meant to discourage us, but to dig foundations that will hold the weight of what is to come. Blessings are not surface things, they are weighty, and unless the ground beneath us is prepared, they may arrive only to overwhelm or undo us. That is why, in wisdom beyond our grasp, we are made to wait, to wrestle, to grow in unseen places. We are often told to believe in the miracle of the blessing, but rarely are we taught to honor the miracle of the process. The vine must be pruned to bear more fruit. The tree must weather winds to strengthen its roots. The soul must sit in silence to hear what can only be spoken in stillness. Preparation is not glamorous. It doesn't photograph well. There are no accolades for patience, no applause for endurance. And yet, the greatest transformations happen here in the quiet forging of character, in the slow burning away of pride, ambition, fear, and the illusions we carry. We are not being denied. We are being reshaped into people who can carry joy without arrogance, influence without corruption, and purpose without collapse. Silence does not mean absence. It often means intimacy. God speaks the loudest in whispers, and it is only in the quiet that we learn to listen differently. We begin to distinguish His voice from the noise of our own desires, from the voices of the world, from the things that once distracted or distorted our understanding. Silence is not empty. It is full of presence. But presence must be discerned, and that discernment is often only born in stillness. The path to the blessing begins here, in a clearing away of the noise, a refining of the focus, a renewal of what it means to walk by faith and not by sight. Pruning is painful because it cuts away what once felt essential. We hold tightly to old habits, old relationships, old ways of thinking because they feel familiar, safe, even if they are no longer fruitful. But pruning is the gardener's gift. It is not an act of cruelty, but of care. A branch that is not pruned grows wild, tangled, and ultimately weak. A heart that is never pruned grows proud, distracted, and unready for more. The cutting back is not a sign of rejection. It is a sign that growth is coming. But the growth we imagine is not always the growth we need. We may be longing for blessings of comfort, visibility, or success, but what we receive instead are blessings of resilience, humility, clarity, and courage. Preparation does not look like progress, and that is why we so often resist it. We confuse movement with momentum, speed with success, but the deepest roots take the longest to grow. The most enduring structures are built on foundations that no one sees. In a culture that glorifies the instant and the visible, it is difficult to trust what takes time, and yet, time is the very tool of transformation. There is something in the slow shaping of a soul that cannot be rushed. Just as the finest wine must age, just as the rarest diamond must endure pressure, the greatest blessings are prepared in the hidden chambers of becoming. There is also a stripping that occurs before the blessing, a holy undoing of our dependence on what is temporary. We are made to release our grip on the things we once thought we could not live without. This feels like loss, but it is actually liberation. We are being freed from the need to earn, to perform, to prove. We are being reminded that blessing is not something we strive for, but something we are prepared to receive. And in that receiving, we are invited to become vessels of something greater than ourselves. Often, the blessing that is coming will require a version of us that does not yet exist. And so, we are led through the wilderness, not because we are lost, but because we are loved too much to be rushed. There are lessons in the wilderness that cannot be taught in the palace. There is a nearness to God in the waiting that surpasses the excitement of the arrival. And perhaps that is part of the preparation too, to learn to love the giver more than the gift, to long for his presence more than his provision. What comes before the blessing is often quiet, slow, unseen, misunderstood. It may feel like delay, disappointment, or even abandonment, but beneath that appearance is a deeper work, a kind of shaping that cannot be skipped. We may not feel ready, but we are being made ready. We may not see the blessing, but the blessing is already unfolding, first in us and then around us. And perhaps the most sacred part of the journey is not the blessing itself, but who we become as we wait for it to arrive. The blessing is not just a gift. It is a responsibility that requires depth of character to carry. The blessing is not just a gift that arrives wrapped in beauty and ease. It is a responsibility that requires depth of character to carry. Too often we imagine blessings as pleasant rewards, signs of divine approval or tokens of favor, but the truth is far more profound. A blessing is not merely something given to make life easier or more enjoyable. It is a sacred trust, something that asks more of us than we may expect. To be blessed is to be chosen for something that carries weight, influence, purpose, and often pressure. It demands not just gratitude, but maturity. It doesn't just elevate a person's circumstances. It enlarges a person's capacity to serve, to endure, to lead, to love, and to reflect something higher than themselves. Gifts can be given to anyone, but blessings are shaped to fit the soul that has been prepared to receive them. And that shaping is not automatic. It requires a heart that has been refined through experience, a spirit that has been humbled, and a mind that has learned to think beyond its own desires. The greater the blessing, the greater the need for integrity, compassion, wisdom, and steadiness. Without these, what begins as a blessing can quickly become a burden or even a downfall. Many people have crumbled under the weight of their own success because they were never taught that the blessing was not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a new one. And that new journey requires far more than skill or confidence. It requires character. Character is not built in the moment the blessing arrives. It is built long before, often in places of obscurity, difficulty, and trial. These are not distractions from the blessing. They are the very conditions that make the blessing sustainable. If a person has not been taught how to handle authority, how to endure disappointment, how to resist temptation, how to forgive quickly and live honestly, then the blessing that was meant to help others through them can turn into a platform that crushes them. The blessing requires someone who can steward it, not just celebrate it. Someone who understands that what they've been given is not primarily for their own comfort, but for the good of others and the glory of God. To be entrusted with something sacred is to carry it with a sense of reverence and responsibility. Think of a leader whose words shape the minds of many, or a parent whose choices influence the direction of a generation, or an artist whose gifts move the hearts of strangers. These blessings carry power, and power always requires restraint. Without restraint, it turns inward and corrupts. With restraint, it flows outward and heals. That is the essence of the kind of blessing that changes lives. It is given not to dominate, but to serve. And service always requires a heart that has been softened, stretched, and emptied of pride. The deeper the blessing, the deeper the surrender it demands. There is a kind of dying to self that must happen in order for the blessing to be received rightly. The ego must be dismantled, the need to be seen must be surrendered, the desire to be praised must be set aside. These are not easy things, but they are necessary, because a blessing held in the wrong hands can become a curse. The blessing is meant to flow through a person, not terminate on them. It is meant to be multiplied, not hoarded. It is meant to bring light to others, not to cast a shadow of self-importance. This is why the refining process before the blessing is so crucial. It burns away the things that would corrupt the gift, so that what remains is a person who can be trusted with what is holy. To carry a blessing well is to understand the cost of it. It means accepting the quiet, thankless labor of faithfulness. It means choosing integrity when no one is watching, choosing kindness when it is not returned, choosing truth when lies would be easier. These are the choices that prepare the heart for more. These are the choices that mark someone as ready, not because they are perfect, but because they have learned to rely on strength beyond themselves. They have learned that the blessing is not about lifting themselves up, but about being rooted deeply enough to lift others. There are blessings that come with visibility, with opportunity, with promotion. These are the kinds of blessings that others can see and admire. But the blessings that matter most are the ones that may never be applauded. The blessing of inner peace, of quiet obedience, of enduring love, of clear purpose, of unshakable joy. These blessings rest on people who have allowed themselves to be formed in hidden places. They are not loud or showy. They do not demand attention, but they shine with a light that cannot be manufactured, a depth that cannot be faked. It is no accident that those who are most used by God are often those who have been most deeply broken. Not because God delights in pain, but because brokenness teaches what blessing cannot: dependence, humility, empathy, and a heart that listens. These are the traits of someone who can carry blessing without being carried away by it. Someone who can speak from experience, give without expecting, and love without condition. These are the kinds of people who do not see blessing as something to grasp, but as something to give away. They are the ones who have learned that the real reward is not in what they receive, but in who they become in the process. The blessing is not a prize at the end of a race. It is a calling to rise to a new kind of life, one that is not about gaining, but about giving. Not about recognition, but about responsibility. And responsibility always requires a soul that is ready to carry more than comfort. It requires someone who has been refined, someone who can be trusted with influence, someone who knows that every blessing is a chance to reflect something far greater than themselves. Delay is not denial. It is often divine shaping for what you are being called to steward. Delay is not denial. It is often divine shaping for what you are being called to steward. There are moments in life when prayers seem unanswered, doors remain shut, and silence fills the space where we longed for clarity. It is easy to believe that such seasons are signs of rejection or failure, that perhaps we have been overlooked or forgotten. But beneath the stillness, something sacred is taking place. The delay is not a withholding of love or favor. It is a deeper preparation for a purpose that cannot be rushed. What we mistake as waiting is often a time of forming. The time between the asking and the receiving is where faith matures, where intentions are purified, where character is refined. There is a wisdom at work in the waiting, one that sees beyond the immediate desire and into the eternal purpose. If every request were granted at once, if every dream were fulfilled without resistance, we would remain shallow in our understanding of what it means to carry significance. The weight of a calling is not light, and the blessing it brings is not always ease. To be entrusted with something of value is to be trusted to handle it well, and trust is not given lightly. It is earned in the unseen places, in the slow days, in the quiet decisions no one applauds. It is earned when we choose patience over panic, hope over haste, and faith over frustration. Delay reveals what is hidden. It exposes our attachments, our expectations, our motives. It shows us whether we seek the blessing for our own gain, or if we are willing to be a vessel through which it flows to others. The shaping that happens in the delay is rarely visible to others, but is always necessary. There are lessons that cannot be learned in comfort, strengths that cannot be developed in speed, and wisdom that cannot be rushed. These qualities grow only in the soil of surrender, watered by the trust that what is coming will arrive at the right time, not a moment too early, nor a second too late. Many of the most profound figures in history and faith experienced long delays before stepping into the fullness of their calling. These delays were not detours, they were design. They were the curriculum through which perseverance was taught, identity was rooted, and dependence was deepened. Delay trains the heart to be faithful in little, so it will not be destroyed when given much. It is not a wall blocking the future, but a path winding toward a readiness that cannot be seen from the outside. What feels like stagnation is often transformation in disguise. The stillness is not empty. It is filled with the quiet work of molding a soul that can carry responsibility without crumbling. In the space of delay, we often confront our doubts most intensely. We begin to question the promises spoken over our lives, the visions we once held, and even the goodness of the one who called us. But it is precisely here, in this furnace of uncertainty, that faith is no longer a concept, but a lifeline. Faith that endures delay becomes a faith that can withstand storms. Faith that survives silence becomes a foundation for others to lean on. Delay sharpens our listening, it hones our sensitivity, and it clarifies what truly matters. We learn to stop relying on signs and start learning to walk by trust alone. We are not simply waiting for things to happen. We are being made into people who can hold them rightly when they do. The blessing that is delayed is not growing stale, it is growing stronger. It is aligning with our readiness, with the maturity of our hearts, and with the right environment for it to flourish. If it comes too early, it may not take root. If it comes too easily, we may not value it. But if it comes after the delay, when our hearts have been softened and our hands emptied of self, it becomes not just a gift, but a commissioning. There are blessings we are asking for that would overwhelm us if they arrived today. Not because they are too great, but because we are not yet able to carry them with the reverence and strength they require. The delay is not about punishment, it is about alignment. It is about bringing together the right time, the right heart, and the right purpose. This kind of timing can only be orchestrated by wisdom beyond our own. We often think we are ready because we feel the ache of desire, but feeling ready and being ready are not the same. Readiness is not measured by how badly we want something, but by how well we are prepared to serve through it. In delay, we are often given glimpses of what is to come, but rarely the full picture. These glimpses are meant to anchor us, not to satisfy us. They are reminders that the story is still being written, that the author has not fallen silent, but is still working in every unseen detail. Delay is not a closed door. It is an invitation to lean in, to listen deeper, to become faithful in the small things. The one who is faithful in delay becomes faithful in destiny. Sometimes we must learn to love the giver more than the gift, to find joy not just in arrival, but in the presence that sustains us in the journey. Delay becomes holy ground, a space where intimacy grows, where humility deepens, and where the soul is stretched to new strength. We come to realize that what we are becoming is more important than what we are waiting for. And though the blessing may still be far off, though the fulfillment may yet tarry, the delay is not wasted. It is forming us into vessels that will not shatter when the blessing finally pours in.